Yeah, alrighty. Alrighty. So, hello and welcome everyone. I've got Bianca joining me for a chat this afternoon. Well, it's afternoon in Melbourne.
Morning.
Just just to have a continue the conversation around people's stories of deprogramming from 12-step programs. And Bianca's reached out to me all the way from Western Australia. Thanks for joining me, Bianca. How you going?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, so like I think you heard my interview with Dale and Madeline,
Yes. Yeah.
and I think that's really kind of what started the ball rolling for me as well, is just like starting to push forward. And because there's not a lot of people talking about it. Deprogramming, leaving AA or NA or any 12-step fellowship. And the more I've dived into it and dug into it and done my research and deprogrammed, the more I've realized how extremely dangerous this 12-step program is. There are some good bits to it. I'm not, you know, well, smashing it out completely. There are good elements to it, but yeah. So let's start with you and your story. If
Mhm.
you just want to share a little bit about yourself and your, I guess, your background and what made you go in, because it was NA that you went into, right?
Well, I've done them all.
Oh, you done?
I started at Alateen as a child, so
Right.
yeah.
Let's yeah, listen to your story and yeah, go for it.
Yeah, cool. So, my mum got sober when I was 7, and I started going to meetings with her then. So I was hearing kind of the lingo in 12-step from a very, very young age. And then obviously mum found out about Al-Anon and Alateen, and I started going to Alateen meetings. And obviously, the conditioning started there because you're not only told when you go to AA or NA that you have a disease, you're also told if you are within the family dynamic of the disease of alcoholism that you also have the isms. So you are also have a disease. So
Yeah.
basically,
Oh, fuck.
I was told at, such a young age that I already had this disease, whether it presented as alcoholism or not, I was always going to have this problem.
Oh my God,
And
I can't believe it. Sorry. I didn't know that that's what they did. Because I'm
yeah,
just like I've just been in AA, right?
of
And
course.
I've yeah, sorry, I'm interrupting. Carry on.
No, that's okay. Al-Anon's the same. It's like you still have the isms, you're
Yeah.
still going to probably attract addicts and alcoholics into your life. And, little things like there's a seat waiting for you in AA meetings, like just the toxicity of, and I was so young and so vulnerable. And, I was watching my mum change so much, and she was changing for the better as far as I could see. So of course I believed these stories that I was being told, and I believed this conditioning that was being ingrained into me, not only in the rooms, but also naturally in the way mum began to raise us, because she kind of lived her life based on the principles of 12-step. 12-step isn't just there to help you get clean and sober.
Mhm.
It's there to basically give you the book for life, this guide for
Right.
living, and therefore it kind of seeps out into everything. And
Mm.
I've really seen that in the way now I respond to life and my ability to trust myself. Because, in the rooms, you're told you're selfish and self centered to the core, and you're born with this illness, and you're not like other people, and your will is dangerous, and, your will got you here. So don't
Yeah.
trust your
Fuck.
first thought or your second thought, and run everything by someone else before you make a decision. And all of the language that is just so dangerous. That my mum was hearing. So, of course, was teaching us girls the same thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I started going to Alateen. I used to sit in AA meetings with my mum all the time. I loved them. I absolutely loved them. I got to sit and hang out with adults. I loved hanging out with adults when I was a kid.
So did I.
And I loved getting up at the end and saying the Serenity Prayer, and we got to eat biscuits. And, it felt fun as a kid. It really did. My sister had the complete opposite opinion. She was so against it. She hated it. She never wanted to go to Alateen. Complete opposite to me. Whereas I just took to it. I really did. I absolutely loved it. And therefore, I thought it was good for me.
Mhm.
And I was very attached to my mum. So seeing her happy meant I was happy, and I just wanted to be doing whatever she was doing. Um, and then I dated someone who had a pretty bad drug dependency when I was 19, and started going to Al-Anon. And same thing, all the conditioning is there. So I was being told the same things, and that, of course you're going to attract an addict because your mother was an alcoholic. And it's just this entrapment, this real, like, you're a victim to this disease. Like, you're not empowered, you're not the authority of your life, you don't get to choose different. And basically just, yeah, accepting and loving this person, but not accepting their unacceptable behavior, which of course that's good, but it was still just this real entrapment. And then I started, drinking a lot. I mean, I started drinking at 13. I was drinking very young. I was a blackout drinker. So, of course, that raised red flags in the family. It was like, oh, Bianca could definitely have this disease. And then I started smoking a lot of pot and then taking psychedelics. And I had a really bad experience with psychedelics and decided that it was time for me to stop. And of course, I reached out to my mum because she was already in the program, and I started going to NA meetings. And this was the first time I was really going for me. And I just slipped straight in there. Like, it was so easy for me to go into the rooms because it wasn't new lingo. It wasn't anything I hadn't heard before. I understood that God didn't have to mean a man in the sky, and but it was still this surrendering your will, right? And
kind of like it was, you were already prepared for it, right?
yeah, definitely. But I
Yeah.
was young. I was 21.
Yeah.
I was vulnerable. I was the only woman in the rooms for a long time. It was not really a safe place for a young girl. And this I very much see now in certain behaviors and certain ways that I was treated. There was a member who offered to take me through the first 3 steps. And he was like, I'm only up to step 4, but I can take you through the first 3. And he came and picked me up one day and we went for a drive, and he's like, oh, I've told my wife that I'm with my sponsor. And I was just like, what? Like, why have you lied to your wife? And then he like asked me if I was attracted to him. And all of a sudden I was just like, oh my God, I'm just here to get better. Like, I so thought this person had good intentions, and that was really scary. And for a long time, I was the only woman and probably the youngest person attending meetings. Most people come in a bit later, and especially in the small town that I'm in. Like, I wasn't in Perth where there's heaps of meetings all the time and there's women's meetings and there's, you can kind of feel a little bit safer. I was just in this only meeting that existed in Bunbury. And I lived in Margaret River at the time and ended up moving up to Bunbury for the fellowship so that I could, get well.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And I see a lot of it. I see a lot of, the 13th stepping that you've been speaking out about is really important. And I feel really passionately about it as well. And, I see a lot of relationships forming with people very early in their recovery. And it's, it would be called in a workplace or anywhere other than a 12-step program, it would absolutely be called, sexual harassment and preying on people. And it's not seen that way because it's like, oh, well, we just met in the rooms. And there's always ways around being 13, calling it 13th stepping. And it's just, the lines are very blurred. So yeah. And then I don't know, about over the past couple of years, I've really stepped away. The mandates were a big one for me. I was told I couldn't go to an NA convention because I wasn't vaccinated. And I was like, oh, that's weird because, the traditions state that they don't engage in outside controversies. And to me, as a good NA member who followed the traditions, I would have been like, cool, we have the convention in a park or at the beach, or we do it at a public place where everyone is welcome. But no, they were having it at this specific venue where only vaccinated people were allowed. And that was really the final straw for me, where I just went, no, I can't be a part of this anymore. And the deconditioning started to happen very organically for me in the way that my life was moving, my spiritual journey, kind of moving out of the initially 12 step and then kind of away from the new age and kind of getting more of an understanding of, the concepts of natural law and realizing, hang on a minute, like, why am I believing that my will exists outside of me? Like, it's just, like, I'm not safe to choose what my life looks like. Because somebody else knows me better than me and somebody else knows what's best for me better than me. And that just didn't feel true anymore. And a few months ago, I was seeing this guy and we were out for dinner and he was having a beer and he was like, what would happen if you just had a sip of this beer? And I was like, oh, it would not be safe. Like, and the conditioning was all still there, right? And I was like, it would be so dangerous for me to do that. Like, I don't know what would happen. And I still identified as being sober. And he was just like, that's not true. He's like, nothing would fucking happen. He's like, you are not the person you were when you were 21 and you had that was just your trauma and the way that was presenting for you. And And I was like, oh, I was like, what would happen? And I was like, I don't know. And then all of a sudden I was like, started to think about it. And my friend a few months before had sent me this podcast by Teal Swan about how alcoholism is not a disease and how you can heal from it. And then I listened to that. And this was just the unraveling. And that year, or it was last year, I still posted on my 8 year sobriety date, like 8 years sober. And it was interesting because I was coming away from that belief system. But I think what it actually was like a fuck you to 12 step. Like I can leave and
Yeah.
still be sober.
Yeah.
It's almost like I wanted to prove to all these people that thought I was back out there
Yeah.
that I was still good.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting. What really came up for me when I did that post, and I could see the ego attachment to proving to 12 step that, you know, I can do it on my own. And because I've had people in the program say to me, oh, surely you're drinking again, surely you're this, you know, it's like all these assumptions of if you leave, you will drink and you will die, you know, like just the language. It's so
That's the cult entrapment, and the group think is I remember like it was almost yesterday, the idea of anyone leaving and the judgment that I would go through my head, like, oh, they're gonna drink. Oh, they're not gonna make it. They're probably gonna
yeah,
die. You know, that's the shit that I used to think. And we used to say that in not exactly in that way, but in meetings, you know, you'd sort of you'd say it in a nice way. This is why we don't leave, because what's the saying? They used to say, like, there's never been any good stories or success stories from people leaving. And I'm
yeah.
like, and I really believe that to my core, like to
Jails,
my core.
institutions, or death. Jails,
Yeah,
institutions, or death. Like it
that's
was
it. Like it was like
constantly
a
said.
mantra, you know?
Yeah. And I remember people would leave and then they'd come back and be like, we don't want to be at your funeral, you know, like we don't
Fucking
want to
hell.
be at your funeral. And it's
Mm.
like, I believed that. I fully believed that if I left, that I would die. And
So did
yeah, it
I.
was interesting. I had a conversation when I decided to stop identifying with, you know, my name is Bianca and I'm an addict or I'm an
Mm.
alcoholic. I decided to stop using that I am statement in or out of the rooms because I still used it when I left, of course. And I had this conversation with my sister and I said to her, you know, I don't want to identify as that anymore. And her conditioning from being in the family was she instantly thought that my life was going to completely unravel and
Mm.
that, you know, I was going to end up in prison or I was going to end up, you know, losing custody of my son or something terrible is going to happen. And, you know, like it's awful because she's not someone who's really ever identified or really kind of resonated with 12 step, but the conditioning was still there. And the fear that it instilled in her that I could step away and be the authority of my own life was so terrifying. This
Mm.
is from someone who loves me and knows me and sees me on my spiritual journey, still believed that I wasn't safe to step away from this
Yeah.
ideology. And it's come full circle. Me, mum, and my sister are all now going through the deprogramming and we're doing it together and it's
So good.
beautiful.
Love
And
that.
yeah, but this idea around not being the authority of your own life has been very confusing, not being
Mm.
able to trust myself. And it's not just around whether or not I can drink or take drugs. It's like, it's everything. I
Mm.
can't do a post on social media without checking, making sure, you know, someone else thinks that it's, you know, worded correctly, or I can't apply for a job without running it by 6 different people. And I can't, and it's this belief system that my will gets me into trouble. It's like I
Mhm.
used to say it in meetings, like your will got you here, like you're not safe, you know, and it was just, that's something that I really am all of a sudden like actually taking the reins of my life and being like, oh my God, like I get to choose
Yeah,
and it's
wow.
safe to choose. I'm co-creating, I'm working with,
Mm.
you know, the ultimate authority, which is myself and nature, because we are one in the same,
Mm.
and no longer having to have this human or this, you know, man in the sky being my authority. It's beautiful.
That's
And
so good to hear. Like,
yeah.
going off what you said about that first thought and learning to trust yourself, like human consciousness is expressed in three ways: thoughts, emotions, and then actions. That's how it manifests, right?
Mhm.
And this 12-step program hijacks that first thought, which is the actual creative essence of us, who we are
Yeah.
as a human race. That's why I keep saying, like, it's such an attack on who we are, that
Mm.
the birth of this program really it's enslavement
It
because
takes away the essence of the
yeah,
person completely. And also in that, it's like we're taught, well, I was told a lot in meetings, like it's not safe to feel too high. It's not safe to feel too
yes,
good. Because if you feel too good, then you might go out and use. So if you're too
yeah,
sad, you might go and drink. If you're too happy, you might go and drink. It's this need for constant just contentment, this
mm.
like just monotone life, because feeling the full range of emotions, having the full human experience is not
Yeah,
safe for you.
yeah,
And that is like, okay, not allowed to feel too happy, not allowed to feel too sad. So it's like I have to just numb. And I have to do that through sitting in meetings and doing as I'm told and asking permission before I do anything. And it's enslavement. It's
yeah,
completely just taking the humanness away from a human.
mm,
And it's awful. Like it actually is so painful to think that I spent so much of my life really believing that, and not only believing it, but so convinced that I was constantly trying to convince others. And when I realized that, I almost felt a bit stupid. It was like, oh my gosh, it's so
yeah,
obvious, but it's not when you're in a cult, because,
yeah,
you
I
know, you
know.
see people in these cults, you know, the
Mm,
real exaggerated versions that you watch on Netflix. And it's like, how do people believe this shit? And it's like, oh, I did.
yeah,
I fell for this shit. Like,
yeah.
it's very humbling.
It is, and then that's where the healing sort of really begins, and the deprogramming really begins, is because you got to be like, wow, that's what I was doing, and you know, to say I was wrong, a lot of people can't do that. A lot of
Mm,
people will go through their whole life just not being able to say I was wrong about something, depending on how deep the programming is. And we've all been programmed. Every single person has experienced
yeah.
it on this planet because of, you know, the different levels of indoctrination that is imposed. And, you know, speaking about natural law, like you mentioned that previously, you know, we're not taught natural law in school.
I
You know,
know, it's criminal.
it's criminal, and this is occulted information that's withheld from us, you know. But let's go back to your reason for taking or using substances in the first place, like that core. What drove you to? What was the reason? Do you know what drove you to use?
It's really interesting when I think about that. I mean, when I was young and drank, it was just because it was cool. I mean, it
Mm,
was just like, yeah, like I just drank because it's what the cool kids were doing. But when it became like this, obviously escaping my reality and it being the happier option, what was going to make me feel the best was, I guess I was just so, I didn't really know who I was. I was a very loud, obnoxious, confident person. And I think drinking and taking drugs really enhanced that and gave me this feeling of being very safe and very confident. Because what I really noticed when I stopped was how all of a sudden I was like, whoa, like I've never been able to identify as someone who has social anxiety. And all of a sudden I don't know how to have a conversation with people.
yeah.
Um, like it was uncomfortable when I had to sit and talk to someone when I first, because I was pretty much like I was stoned from the moment I woke up until I went to bed every night. Like it was, you know, I smoked a lot of weed. But yeah, when I actually think about like the core reason, I wonder honestly if it's because I had this belief that I was going to have a problem. Like it was like, oh, well, you're going to, like if you do, like, you know, if you drink, you're probably going to be an alcoholic because that's what happens in the family disease of alcoholism.
Mhm.
So yeah, I had childhood trauma and I had all these things, of course, as we all do. Like there was reasons to drink and use, but I already believed it. I
Yeah.
already had a problem with alcohol before I ever picked up a drink. I already had a problem with drugs. I held so much guilt every time I drank, every time I smoked, every time I took any kind of drugs. There was always this guilt and this fear of, what if it's true? What if I do have a problem? So therefore I hid it, but in the guilt and the shame of hiding it, I
Mm.
did more of it to escape from the guilt of and shame of hiding it.
It's a
And
self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? Pretty much.
exactly. And
Yeah.
mum or my sister would be ringing me and I'd be smoking a bong and the guilt would come over me and it would be like, oh no. And then I'd wake up the next morning and be like, oh, I don't want to feel that again. How do I not feel? I keep going.
Yeah, yeah. That's so,
And
yeah, that
yeah,
conditioning in the programming, like you were pretty much born into it. And, you know, that's not to you know, put anyone in your family down, or
absolutely not.
it's not that. It's more the fact
Yeah.
that this program exists, and it's
Yes.
where as in the society that we live in, through whether it's through the rehabs, through the court systems or whatever, it's propagated as the solution. And people do just generally want to get well and be happy. But
Yes.
when you believe, all right, the belief is such a strong element in life when it comes to your own health, mental health, physical health. If you believe that substances, alcohol or drugs, actually can control you, you've already lost.
Yeah.
You've already lost. Like,
because you are surrendering control to that thing.
exactly. So you've built a relationship based on a belief system that has been propagated through, television, movies, where it's been born from this 12-step program. And that is a myth, and it's a lie, and it's misinformation. And the substances do not control us. It's,
No.
and that is the foundation of what holds these programs. Really, it's
Definitely.
the glue.
And when
So
I was a kid, it wasn't anywhere near as propagated as it is now. Like,
mm,
I remember, it wasn't in every single movie and in every single TV show like it is today. I mean, it was definitely out there. I remember watching Finding Nemo as a kid. And when, the sharks are having a meeting, I got so excited. It was like I could
oh
relate.
yeah, I forgot about that.
I like ran to mum and I was like, they're having a meeting, they're having a meeting. It was like I could relate and I got so excited. And back then it was like it was exciting to see it as
Yes,
me. Probably
yeah,
not
me
for
too.
everyone else.
Me too. Because I
Yeah.
really believed that this was, everybody needed to have this 12 step in their life because it was so good and for like
Everyone can benefit from a 12-step
yeah.
program. And I
I
did them all. I did AA, NA, I did Overeaters Anonymous, I did OA, I did Al-Anon. I honestly I
I
wanted
did
to
FA. I did FA, and
what's FA?
it's food addiction.
Yeah, okay.
Like, how
Yeah.
can you be addicted to food?
Yeah.
Like, and relapse on food when it's like, it's insane. I
Yeah.
think I was only there for 2 months, and I was like, because I had a lot of self body image issues, and that relationship with food, very, very, like, that was probably even before the substances, I think, for me,
Yeah.
because I really did not like myself, that self-hatred. And I was not a bad looking person, a kid growing up. It's just that I believed I was. And
Yeah.
then anyway, but the FA, like, that program is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, well, OA was similar. Like you have to weigh your food and all this. Like it was bringing in more restriction, which was the issue for me in the first place, was that I used to like eat and purge or even went through like periods of anorexia and starving. And then it's like, oh, you should control. It's like having more control over food. And it's like, but
Yeah.
my problem is that I try to have too much control over
Control.
food. And it just was so contradicting.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't for me. I didn't stick at it for very long. I kind of just really sat with my relationship with food and probably did what anyone should do who has an eating disorder, and just start to, look at why I use food to escape, the same as you would drugs or alcohol or anything
Exactly.
else, or why I, have this idea around my body. And, it's got nothing to do with the substance. Food is not the problem.
Yeah.
Drugs is not the problem.
Yeah.
Alcohol is not the problem. It's
Yeah.
like my relationship to it. And I am in control of my experience. I'm in control of my relationship to everything I relate with.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's been
yeah.
so powerful to come to that realization of like, oh, it's a bit confronting at first. It's like, what? Someone isn't going to come and save me. I have to save
Exactly.
myself.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
both. It's both. It's freeing and it's also like, holy shit,
I
like
got to take
radical
responsibility.
responsibility. Yeah. And that's
And
scary. That's terrifying,
for a
but
lot of people.
also
Yeah.
so
Sorry.
empowering. It's both. It's both simultaneously.
Mm. Because
Yeah.
people really want to label themselves with some sort of disorder, or whether it's I'm an alcoholic or an addict, just so they can relieve that responsibility. It's like, oh, well, I'm sick, or poor me, I acted this way because I have a disease. And then they make their amends based on the fact that I'm sorry, but that's why I behaved. I was really sick. And no, you behaved like that because you were a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
I behaved like that because I was an asshole, and
Yeah.
I was selfish at the time, and I made those choices. I made those choices.
Yes.
So, like, it's
I'm
quite
not still that person today. and I get
Yeah,
to choose different. It's
exactly.
like this, idea of it's in the corner doing push-ups and all these things. It's like it's there waiting for you. You're always going to be that way unless you do these 12 steps, unless you live by these. And it's like, fuck that. Like,
And
that's
what you're
not true.
talking, yeah, what you're talking about there is the actual disease, right? This is just to clarify for someone that doesn't
Yes.
know. This is how they, in the meetings, they say your disease is doing push-ups. You
Yeah.
know, just yeah, because the
And
the
it's
link.
progressive. It's not only going to be, it's not going to be as bad as it was when you pick it back up. It's going to be worse. It's been
Mm,
growing with you. It's like you're going to be even worse than the last time you had a drink next time you have one if you pick one back up, or a drug or whatever it is. It's like it's progressive. Like it doesn't just stop there and wait for you. It keeps going. It gets bigger. It's snowballing in the background, just waiting for you to come back. And the
yeah.
mental obsession will convince you. Like the triangle in AA is just, it is the entrapment. It's like this mental obsession, and then it's the idea of the physical allergy. It's like I really questioned myself for a long time
Mhm.
when I wanted to stop identifying with the labels. Was like, is this my mental obsession? Like I used to really question. It was awful because my soul knew that this wasn't the truth. But then the conditioning was there of like, oh, well, what if I am just trying to convince myself and I'm not safe and I will go crazy, or I will, I don't know, start drinking and I will be dead in the gutter. It's like, but I knew I wasn't going to, but it was still there. The questions were still there because it had been
Mm,
so indoctrinated into me from such a young age. And I'd be like, oh, you don't understand. Like, I'm allergic. Like, I have a different reaction to other people. Once I start, I can't stop. And
mm.
it's like, that's not true.
Yeah.
I
Let's,
get to control. Like, I can start and I can stop if I choose to, or I can just not start at all. It doesn't actually matter. It's a
yeah,
choice.
it's a choice.
I'm not a victim to it. It's not more powerful than me. It's not there waiting for me to, take it back.
Yeah. Let's talk a little
Yeah.
bit about in the meetings, because something that's occurring on a global scale, because AA is in 75 countries, and it's massive. A lot of people don't realize, and I'm making this point in all the talks I give, just so I drive this home,
Hmm.
that in meetings there are no professionals, medical professionals, psychologists or therapists that attend, right?
Yes.
And yet, so it's run by just average anyone basically that wants to
Mhm.
identify as an alcoholic. And yet in these meetings, they're propagating this concept of that it's a disease and it's fatal and it's incurable. Now, no one's above the law. So,
Yeah,
what's actually occurring in AA meetings is people are practicing medicine without a license every day.
definitely.
And it might not
100%.
be like what it looks like in a like I'm diagnosing you, but the conversations that are occurring, sometimes sponsors will outright say to their sponsee that you have a disease.
Hmm.
In other settings, like I've said this before myself, that I would share my disease and then I'd say that if you relate to me, that means you have the disease too. And it's kind of,
Yeah.
that's a more manipulative, subtle way of doing it. But you're still practicing medicine one way or another.
Well, it's psychological manipulation. Like
Exactly.
it's so dangerous. Like it's so dangerous. And like you said, it's only an alcoholic can diagnose themselves. It's the only self-diagnosing disease and all of the things that are said. But I remember when I got up to step 3, like my sponsor was like, do you believe that you have a problem? And do you believe this program can help you? And if the answer to those 2 questions aren't yes, then I can't. It was like, like you absolutely have to fully believe that you have a disease before you can basically keep going and be a part of, this
Yeah.
program. And it's so dangerous. It's like it's psychological manipulation. And it is just run by, you know, really dangerous people a lot of the time. Like especially nowadays. And I've known people who have been court ordered to be in meetings. I've been around these people that are there as a part of their parole who, should otherwise
Mm,
be in prison. And it's like, that's not safe. That's not a safe place to not be regulated. It's not
yeah.
regulated. Their parole officer doesn't have to come with them to meetings to make sure they're not harming anyone.
Wow.
They just have to go to their meetings within their curfew, before they have to be home at night. And it's like there are such like it is the most vulnerable place people go there when they are at their absolute lowest, and they're around these people that don't actually want to be there. They're told that they have to be there, and there are no professionals in the room.
Yeah.
There is no one there regulating that and making sure it's a safe environment for everyone there, other than the traditions. You know, the traditions basically is the regulation, and they're so outdated and they're not adhered to.
They're not even talked about. They're not really even
I was
talked
such
about.
a pusher of the traditions. I used to read them out every meeting I chaired. I was like, we need to be more, you know, because that was the only level of regulation. I was like, we need to be living by the traditions. Everyone thought I was so annoying. It's like, we don't just read the steps in this meeting, we also read the traditions. And yeah, they're dated. And this program was, I know now that obviously it was deliberately written and it wasn't with good intent, but also it was written in the 30s. It is not still relevant in 2024.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
just not.
Yeah.
And but yeah, what you're saying is, yeah, it's so dangerous that people come in, diagnose themselves, and just, you know, this, it's told it's only an alcoholic can help an alcoholic. It's like this exclusivity of like a doctor can't help you and they shouldn't. So where does it keep you? In these rooms, in this cult, basically.
Yeah. And like if
It's
you
so
really want
dangerous.
to get well, like you don't hang around everyone that is also sick. That's not how you
Exactly.
get well, you know? That's how you
No.
stay sick. You know,
Yeah.
I had that conversation with a friend of mine only a couple of days ago, and she was just, her jaw dropped. Like she couldn't believe that this is what is going on. And every person I've had this conversation with, now that I'm like speaking out about it to everyone, their jaw drops. Like people can't believe that this is going on because everyone has this idea that AA is a good thing, you know? and
Definitely.
and there is an intention of a good thing, but that actually is irrelevant when it comes
Yeah.
to what actions are being
Of course, because
um
the people who come in aren't there to do harm. They're not doing that
exactly.
deliberately. Like that's not what this is about. This is about the danger of the indoctrination and what it actually is doing, like the intent behind why it was created, not the intent of the people in the rooms, because most of them are very much there with good intentions,
That's
of
it.
course. And, you know, like you were saying around about being in a room, you know, full of sick people is not a place to get well. Not just that, the power of the I am statement, like you are literally have to identify every time you speak, basically in the rooms. My name is Bianca and I am an addict or I am an alcoholic. Like the power in that, in what that actually does to you psychologically. You're not only saying I am, you're literally stating your name first, like you're fully declaring it.
Mhm.
And you're not just, you know, most people go to what I was going to about 3 a week when I was going regularly. Some people go to multiple meetings a day.
Yeah.
And you're stating that. You're constantly reaffirming that you are this thing. It's like, no, I'm just Bianca. That's it. I'm
Mhm.
Bianca.
Mhm.
And I can be whatever I want to be on any given day. And I'm
Yeah.
not an addict. I'm not an alcoholic. I didn't drink this morning. Like
Yeah.
I actually, and it's, you know, yeah, it's just, it's toxic and it's
Yeah.
dangerous. And yeah, I'm so grateful that people are speaking out about it, because the same as you, when I talk to my friends about it who don't have any understanding of it, they can't believe the things that are said in the room.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was normal because
Yeah.
I was sick and I needed to be told that, because otherwise I'm selfish and self-centered to the core and manipulative. So I need to be told how to live my life. Otherwise, I'm not a very good person,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? Like I don't get to just, yeah, just the lack of self-trust really is what comes back for me.
Mm.
It's such a big one.
Out of curiosity, did your sponsor get you to bend your knees and
Get on your
get
knees.
on your knees? Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a lot of get on your knees, get on your
Right.
knees. And
Yeah.
mum used to say it a lot. And, you know, she she was very, you know, she's what, 23 years was in basically the program. So, but yeah, get on your knees was a big one. It was always this surrendering to something greater than yourself.
Mm.
And I did it. I used to do it most
Mm.
nights before I went to bed or in the morning when I got up, get down on my knees, and, you know, this real sense of worship.
Mm.
And, you know, if you can't pick a God, make God the rooms, you know, like you're literally making this group of people who, you know,
But you don't
no,
know.
yeah, well, but yeah, absolutely. You don't know, but some of them, like, it's so dangerous.
Yeah.
A group of drunks, you know, is the God, God, a group of drunks. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, that's more powerful than me.
Yeah.
Like it's really taking the power away from people.
Yeah.
Like every person is powerful to choose their life and to choose their experience, and to take that away from people is so dangerous. And it's happening everywhere. You know, it's
Mm.
very much on the microcosm in AA, but it's
Mm.
happening everywhere. You know,
Yeah.
the new age spirituality is very similar to the indoctrination of, you know, religion, and I see it playing out. Like they're all basically based on very similar principles. It's just packaged in different ways.
Yeah.
And now that I'm seeing it and I'm really, you know, diving into natural law, I'm just like, oh my gosh. And
It's
it's so
crazy.
simple. And
Yeah,
it's
it
like,
is.
this isn't something I've found, it just is. And it's so simple, and it brings so much freedom and safety and responsibility and just all of the beautiful things that every human being actually wants.
Yeah. And it's having that knowledge going, you know, when you actually have knowledge that's based in truth, then, you know,
Yes.
you are so right on that right path, because you have a chance, you know, to firstly not be enslaved, but
Hmm.
begin to experience that internal anarchy, which is self-rulership, self-ownership,
100%.
of your mind, your body, and your soul. And then you can, you know, operate in the world from a stronger place, right? And help others from the
100%
right,
from
you know,
sovereignty. Like
yeah.
that is so important. And yeah, I mean it's everywhere. Can see it playing out in so many different scenarios, and
Mm.
yeah, even in government and all the things. But yeah, I just think so many people, like you've said, like now that it's being so propagated in movies, like people really think it is this good place. So therefore it's like, oh, if you have a problem, there is this place to go, even people who don't have any experience. And it's like there is so many other things people can be doing, and it's doing the shadow work really. Like everyone has that available to them if you can look at your shit and work through it and be supported by a community in a way that leaves you still feeling powerful.
Hmm.
It's all you actually need.
Yeah. And looking at the
Like,
darkness and being okay
yeah.
with, you know, your qualities that aren't your best qualities. Like I've got my shit, you know, and I've got things about myself that I don't like, but they're a
Mhm.
part of me, you know, and I'm okay
Exactly.
with that. And
Yeah.
it's like I've really sat in that, learned to love that, because we are living in the world where it's duality, there's light. If we
Exactly.
cannot know the light if we don't know the dark,
100%.
you know?
Exactly. And
So yeah.
yeah,
Um
yeah, so good. So good.
Let's talk about the 12th step, because one of the cult's tenets that I sort of really see that is um, a big problem, what makes a cult is the recruitment process, you know, and
Yes.
um, maybe you could share a little bit about that. What is the 12th step?
So the 12th step. Oh, what actually is it? I'm trying to remember.
Oh,
Um,
actually can't remember it off the top of my head. So
Isn't that
actually,
amazing? I used to be able to recite all of
I
the
know,
literature.
me
It's nice to
too.
not remember it.
It's really good to not remember it, but let's just for the sake. Oh, actually, I got it marked. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. 12th step. Having had a spiritual oh my God, I'm getting triggered. Shit. All right, here we go. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps,
Yeah.
we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our
In all our
affairs.
affairs.
Mm.
Yes. Yeah. So basically, it was that you absolutely, it's not that you have to be of service in your life, it's that you have to be of service to the program,
Mhm.
and you have to be out there convincing people to go through the 12 steps, basically, is what my experience of it was. It was like, yeah, you can help the old lady take her trolley to the car, but also you absolutely must be, you know, carrying this message to other addicts and other alcoholics. And I was I was a really good AA member. I would say. I think I used to really push it a lot. And, you know, I think there was a lot of people in the rooms who would just, anyone who drank, it was like, oh, they have a problem and we need to save them and we need to. And I didn't quite have that level, but anyone who came in, I was straight up there. I was so willing. I loved to sponsor. I loved to, you know, be carrying this message. I felt like I was doing such a good thing. And it's recruitment. Absolutely. And the things that I said to people as a sponsor is I honestly I have so I need to go and make a true amends
Yeah.
for the wrong that I've done.
Yeah.
Um, because it's basically telling people that they're powerless, and there's definitely a lot of, your sponsor is not God and you should not worship your sponsor. But then it's quite, there's a paradox, because also it's like, oh, don't, before you do anything, run your decisions by me. And I used to say this to my sponsees, before you go and do anything, come to me first and, run the decision by me, because your best thinking isn't very good thinking. And, like you said, it's hijacking the thought, which literally is our creative spark. But yeah, the 12th step is, it's recruitment. It absolutely is. It's culty.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Got to
even
give
the
it
way
away
that
to
it's
keep it. Got to
pardon?
got to give it away to keep it. They say
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And it's the inversion of truth. Like, absolutely, we have to give in order to receive, but it's been inverted and it's been flipped and it's been manipulated and used as a way to grow. And it's a very successful business model. Like, people, I used to think AA is non for profit and it's so great and it's so this, and it's like, yeah, okay, so the money going into the meetings often is just paying the rent and paying for the tea and coffee, but what about the money for all the literature that's going to head office that we don't actually know? Well, as we look more into it, we might know, but we don't know where that money's going, and we just assume it's there to help, for addicts to help other addicts, and it's bullshit. Like, I should have, it should have been a big red flag for me when John D. Rockefeller was in the big book, It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, the Rockefellers were mentioned in the literature of Alcoholics Anonymous.
They're mentioned in, and it's a genius business model that from my research, Bill has basically created this fantasy and foresaw how this would work, because it's they talk about it in the freedom model. That's where they've got this revolving door policy of the rehabs and then the AA 12 steps. Like, it's designed so people continue. So they needed bodies to come in and out of the meetings in order to keep that dollar in the basket coming in.
Of course.
Because Bill knew it didn't work, because people weren't staying sober. Even the 100 members at the end of the book, that's all made up, right?
I heard you say that in another
Yeah.
interview that I watched. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, I didn't know that.
So the guys that wrote the freedom model, they were ex-AA members, and they were more involved right up to like, I guess you could hear them talk about it, and they've done the research around the business model, and you can check it out. It's on the online portion. You do have to pay for it, but
Yeah.
they do talk about it in their podcast as well.
Yeah,
And
cool.
anyway, it's really true, because I don't know exact percentage, but the majority of rehabs are 12-step based. So when you go to rehab, you've got a big book sitting there waiting for you,
Yeah.
and someone needs to pay for that, right? So you're being indoctrinated straight away. You do your rehab, you leave rehab, and then you're told to go to your meetings, right?
Mhm.
And because there's such a low success rate, like it's only 5%,
I
majority of
thought it was
people,
less than 5. I didn't know it was 5%.
I think it fluctuates.
Yeah, of course.
But when I say 5%, that's the only of people that stay sober for a year. So it really would be
Wow.
lower, I think, if it's within the months.
Yeah.
And they gauge that by how many people get the chips. That's how the data
Yeah.
is collected, right?
Okay.
So it's not even, it wouldn't be 100% accurate, because not everyone gets chips.
Cool.
But I saw majority of people never coming back to meetings, and I went to regular meetings every week, and I only saw people leaving. I only saw a very, very small percentage of people actually stuck around in the 9 years that I was
Me
there.
too. And I saw
And
people, like you said, I've seen the same person go in and out of, multiple rehabs and then come back into the rooms and then go back out. And people, it's like, it works if you work it. So it's like, it's not the program's fault, it's
it's your
yours.
fault. Exactly. And people will be stuck in that loop sometimes for the rest of their life, just trying to get sober, in and out of rehab, into meetings. They relapse because they think they're sick, back into rehab. And like, it's torture. So
Mm,
you actually are paying with your life. Even if you don't donate that dollar in that basket or whatever amount of money, you are paying with your life. And that's an energetic force in itself. Like, what are you
exactly.
giving that to? Um, it's just like, we could go on. There is so much in this book that is
Oh, yeah.
like, yeah. But I want to, because I'm more just when I say I'm not, what's the word? Conscious. I was going to say concerned.
Yes.
That's not the right word. conscious of the time, I really want to sort of
Yeah,
just talk about your deprogramming, because I want to leave it on a high,
of
on a
course.
positive note, because real solutions, like we've already have had that theme throughout today's talk, but just talk a little bit about your deprogramming, just some of the things that you found really helped you, for the purpose of anyone that's listening to this, if they're wanting to find out a bit more about what that felt like.
For sure. So for
Um,
me, it's been, for starters, just getting away from the indoctrination, leaving the meetings, stop going and hearing that same lingo and having it reinstilled into me on a weekly basis.
mhm.
And putting myself around the kind expanders, people in my life who I actually do look at and go, oh, they're doing something that I do want to be doing, and not in a way of worshiping or looking up to, or but being like, yeah, actually, that's the kind of life I want to be living. And they're not there saying that they've got a problem. They're solution focused in their life. They are the authority of their life. Um, having understanding of truth, like natural law for me has been such a big one, because it all ties in together, right? Because it basically is the smashing of the programming of all new age spirituality, and I include 12-step into that because it's similar in the way that it operates. And understanding that, to put our will and our life outside of ourselves keeps us in a place of believing that we are not powerful. So the deprogramming for me has been around looking at my whole life, not just focusing on specifics of like, was I an alcoholic or a drug addict? It's like, that's actually pretty irrelevant. It's like, in my whole life, how am I living as if I'm someone who is living in this small world, who believes this really small-minded thinking about the way I operate and what I'm safe to and not to do. So that's been a really big one for me, is like looking at everything and being like, oh, that's actually affecting me in all areas of my life. Like I don't trust myself at all, because that's what I've been told not to do. So I've started listening to the freedom model. It's really interesting because the deprogramming for me has been happening so organically, and I hadn't heard of the freedom model, and now
There you
listening to
go.
it and actually getting like the scientific basis around it and the truth, I'm like, oh my gosh, like my soul knew this. And I heard you say it the other day in your you did an episode with Dale, and you're like, my intuition was always louder than the programming.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, me too.
Mhm.
Like I was almost trying to convince myself, like shut down what my soul was screaming at me and be like, no, 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 this is right because it's what I've been told is right. Even though there wasn't actually a lot of evidence to support that was right. So also that, like how many people are actually getting the life that they truly desire through sitting in 12 step? And it's like, not very many. And the ones that are, most of them already decided before they got into these meetings that they wanted their life to look different. So what they're actually succeeding on is their own will. It's
Yeah.
not the will of the program. It's not. That's actually keeping you more stuck. You'd be more free if you just went and lived your life. Like, yeah. So the deprogramming for me has been just speaking about it, talking like when I was talking to when I was convicted and believing it, people were like, what do you mean? Like
Yeah.
literally just ridiculing what I was saying. And I was like, oh, maybe that does sound really stupid and weird. And yeah, so it's been such an organic process for me. And I'm so grateful for that. It's just kind of, as I've stopped going and started, I didn't go and start hanging out with people who were drinking heaps and taking heaps of drugs and living the kind of life I used to live. I started putting myself around people who were actually living the kind of life that I want to live.
Yeah.
And I have a beautiful community, and it's not a cult, no one tells me, they empower me, they see me in my power, and they remind me that I'm sovereign and that I'm powerful, not that I have to surrender that over to something else. And that's the biggest thing, is like really finding in yourself that you are the co-creator of your reality. You are working with, you're not worshiping
Yeah.
anything. And as soon as you are, you're in danger.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been the biggest thing for me, and it's so freeing.
Mm.
It's been so freeing. The freedom I've received through just no longer having to believe this thing about me that, you know, I was born this way and there's something wrong with me, and that basically without something I'm destined to be a shit person, is just, it's not something I choose to subscribe to anymore. And as a result, I'm a better person because I believe it, you know, it's really that simple.
What I find
Choice.
really exciting is that this is happening now for you and your family, like, and that I'm so excited to hear how that how you guys move forward together, because, you know, really family is so important in
Yeah.
how we work together, and how it's, you know, because again, if you look at the 12 step, the program, it's really there's a lot of destruction of the family unit occurring as well, because it's all programming. But what do you see moving forward now with your life? Like, what are your plans with this? Because how long have you been deprogramming for?
I'd say, well, really probably over the last couple of years, probably the
Yeah.
last 2 years is kind of when I've really started to very, very slowly unpack, but to like a more exaggerated, you know, like really focusing on it. It's probably been the last 6 to 8 months. And for me, I just see, I mean, I'm actually doing a lot of research and study and observation around natural law. So, and I'm very passionate about women, supporting women. So for my life, it's like, I want other people to see themselves in their power. That's really important for me. And that's kind of the message I want to be here to share. So, and with what you said about my family is like, I don't have to pretend that I still think I have a problem to keep anyone else safe anymore. I get to be free and I get to be me, and I get to be in my authentic expression, not afraid that, you know, this person or this entity that has authority over me is going to disapprove. And that's really beautiful. And I've been having these conversations a lot with my mum and my sister of like, thank God we've all come to this at about the same time, because it would be so hard and so heartbreaking for me to be in this position and my family to not see me as powerful in it, and to be scared that I was going to go back to something that I used to do. And I don't want to say that I used to be, it wasn't what I was, it was just something I was doing. Whereas now I get to be fully in my own power and see others in their power and allow them to be that authentic expression. Like that's so my passion. Like I really want to, I'm very passionate about the sacredness of womanhood and bringing back women actually being women and supporting women and being in community and, you know, smashing the sisterhood wound. And I think there's such a societal push right now around, you know, gender basically not even existing, to then actually smash the idea of how powerful it is to be a woman and what we're capable of, and the power of our intuition and the power of what we used to do for tribe. We can be doing that today for our lives and for the people around us. And I just want people to see themselves as powerful. And that's only able to happen through me seeing myself as powerful. And that's been my journey over the past few months. And right now there is so much fire in me, and doing this work around natural law and just being like, fuck, of course, it doesn't have to be complicated. Like listening to Mark Passio and Will Keller, like completely simplifying this thing that people see as so profound. I'm just like, of course, I don't need to be out there preaching it. I get to just be an embodiment of it, and people are just going to gravitate, and people are going to get to see themselves as powerful again. And I'm seeing that in my family unit. I'm seeing it in my friendship group. And I'm like, you know, it can only get better from here. And it's fucking exciting. It's so
Yay!
exciting to feel free at 30. I'm like, yes, my 30s are going to be fucking great.
I'm so excited for you guys, like you, your family, and your friends, and like how change can, yeah, what's going to change for you guys. Yeah, wow. I'll be, I guess, following you and, you know, staying in touch with you, because I really admire that people that step into their power and speak truth and live by it and help others as a result, and real truth, like 'cause truth can be
Yes.
known, you know,
Yes.
and the solution starts from within us, not from, you
Absolutely.
know, all the other shit that's going on. And not
Yeah,
to
and I
down.
resonate a lot. Like I resonate so much. Like when I hear you speak, I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like we said it when we were on the phone the other day. It's like, are we just like the same
So
person?
we've had
So many
such a
synchronicities in our
yeah
story.
yeah, Like
And
everything
that's
that you
just
said.
happening.
Yeah. Same thing for me. I had the same, very similar story to you. Wow. Yeah.
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 Amazing.
So any
Such a cool
last
conversation.
things that you wanted to say before we sort of wrap it up?
Um, I feel like I feel pretty complete. It's been, I mean, there's so much that we could just chat about. Like, I would love
Yeah.
to, continue conversation with you, but this has just felt really wholesome. And what I wanted coming on here was to not sit here and just gossip about AA and the people in
Yeah.
AA. And it felt really good to hold true to that and be like, no, it's more about the psychology behind it and what's
Yeah.
happening. And people need to know what's happening. Because if anyone who does attend 12 step listens to this, it's not about attacking them. It's not
Yeah.
about, telling people that they're bad or that they're wrong. It's about just planting those little seeds of maybe the psychological damage that's happening in these rooms actually isn't good.
Yeah.
And I think that is the message that I want to share, continuing to talk about this myself. And I know for me, that's how I receive information a lot better than feeling like I'm being attacked in something that I already do and believe in. So
Yeah.
that was kind of my intention coming in. And it feels good to just share that to kind of wrap it
Yep.
up. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Bianca. Like I think this is going to help a lot of people and what you've said and shared. And yeah, we'll stay in touch and
Definitely.
yeah,
And
enjoy.
thank you for being this voice that's
Oh,
starting this. Like, it's just, yeah, it's really powerful. And if it wasn't for your podcast that you did on Sky to Earth, like, I don't know if I would continue just doing this silently. Like, now I feel like this
yeah.
gets to be a part of my work as well, because it does tie into the kind of, the message I actually want to spread as my time here on this planet. So it's really opened doors for me, and I'm so grateful. And
Mm.
talking is my genius, speaking is my genius,
Yeah.
and I'm always so scared to show up on camera. And this just gets to be a practice run for me, potentially doing this more in my own little world. So
You're a
yeah,
natural
so
at
grateful.
speaking. Like it's like you've done this before many times. So yeah, you've definitely got something there. And yeah, I'll be there to help you and support you with whatever what you need. But yeah, I am just so excited for you guys, you and your family, because this is awesome. Like
Yeah,
gets this is what drives me, is that holy shit, I can actually help people with something. And what held me back was my own fear, really.
of
That
course.
was the
And
only
same.
thing. And it's
Yeah.
just like,
And yeah.
yeah. So
I know you've spoken to mum and my sister as well. So I know that you've heard a
yes.
little bit of their story as well. So it's just, yeah, it's really cool. It's
Yeah.
really cool.
All right. Well, I'll let you go. I've kept you for an hour. So
Been amazing. It's gone so fast. I
yeah, I
can't believe it's
know.
been an hour.
All right, we'll stay in touch and yeah,
Definitely.
have an awesome day.
Amazing.
Cool.
Thank you, Julia.
No worries. Bye.
Bye.